I've been waiting for a story like this for a very long time. Partially because I fuck with it so much, but also because it gives me an opportunity to talk about something that I've been wanting to discuss since this channel's inception. Now, this video is admittedly going to be a bit controversial, because of course, in addition to exploring the wonderful narrative depths of the Coffin of Andy and Leyley, we are also going to have to address the elephant in the room when it comes to this game. The Coffin of Andy and Leyley had actually been on my radar for quite a bit longer than most people. I am known for my proclivity to troll itch.io and save any and all RPG Maker horror games that look even remotely interesting. Then, unbeknownst to me, who still had yet to actually sit down and play the game, it released its first 2 chapters on Steam, and very shortly thereafter, Twitter got its slimy little mitts on it. And let me tell ya, it wasn't pretty. We'll get into this more later, but suffice to say that most of the problems Twitter had with this game were entirely unwarranted. Most of the controversy surrounds one particular scene in the game, where the 2 main characters, the titular siblings Andrew and Ashley, experience a demon-induced dream where they sleep together. This scene, guess what, is entirely optional. It is very possible to actively pick a different option and not see this scene at all. If you would like, you can leave the incest subtext entirely in the background of this game and not worry about it. This sounds like I'm making excuses for the game, and that's not what this video is about. In fact, this video is going to be primarily about A, actually defending the use of incest in the game as a narrative tool to illustrate important things about the 2 main characters, and B, going into much more detail about what the game is really about, since a lot of the arguments Twitter users had been making were primarily about the story being exclusively, and I quote, made for freakazoids. So this video will be divided into 3 parts. First, I'll briefly summarize the game for those who need to catch up, although if you want to waste 5 hours of your life, you could actually just watch my live stream of it. Or, heaven forbid, spend $10 in a game and actually play it. Then I'll be addressing the controversy properly, which is mostly my excuse to talk about why Twitter just kind of sucks in general. And then, finally, the actual fun part, I'll be delving deep into the text of the game to really explore the depths of its narrative, because holy shit, it's worth a high dive or 2. Our miserable little journey starts in an apartment. An apartment that our 2 main characters are stuck in due to quarantine. There was apparently a parasite infestation in the water of their apartment complex, and the 2 have been confirmed to be infected. However, there's some suspicion of how legitimate this whole affair is, as the news is lying to the public about them being fed and taken care of. The truth is, they haven't been given any food in weeks and are close to starving to death. You could say that this apartment almost resembles a coffin? As the 2 siblings slowly starve to death, we begin to learn more about them. Andrew, the older brother, is pessimistic, an anxious wreck, and honestly kind of a doormat. He lets his little sister Ashley walk all over him. He specifically hides their last can of tomatoes from her, but immediately gives in to her demands to eat them.
No, put the tomatoes away somewhere.
Put them in my mouth, I will.
I can see that your heart is set on this. Fine, let's eat them then. Screw our future selves.
What? This video was absolutely not an excuse to get Dragon to voice Andrew. What are you talking about? Also, we dubbed most of the important scenes from the game fully, so link in the description of the playlist, and also should be popping up in the corner right about now. Ashley, on the other hand, is kind of weird. We immediately get that impression when Andrew receives a phone call from his girlfriend, only for her to promptly break up with him. We can't hear most of what's happening, as we are chained to Ashley's brain at the moment, who is half passed out on the couch, but her name is definitely mentioned. Pair that with a flashback of her manipulating Andrew into shoving a girl who had a crush on him into a box in an abandoned warehouse and locking her in there until the morning, and the picture is not necessarily pretty. It looks like it might be the end for our 2 heroes. God, I'm a comedy genius. But just when it looks like they might truly starve to death, something strange happens. The 2 happen to be spying on their weird neighbor because he keeps playing this obnoxious music, only to discover him summoning a demon, one that promptly kills him. So what's the logical conclusion after discovering their neighbor's dead body? Well, to eat it. Of course, I mean, come on, they are starving to death. Andrew has more qualms about this than Ashley does, but of course he ends up having to be the one that does most of the dirty work.
I couldn't get his head off. His spine was too... Anyway, I kind of just, kept cutting around and then pulled it off.
Horrifying. Yet, Ashley seems less than perturbed. The next morning, the two quickly make plans to escape the apartment. They use the demon summoning ritual to sacrifice one of the wardens, and in exchange, the demon gives Ashley a pendant which will give her prophetic dreams. So, that's cool. A bunch of shit goes down. Andrew ends up killing like 2 people, mostly in the name of protecting Ashley, but she still gets pissed at him for making her do the ritual. He got to hang out with the hot girl from the next floor down. She's one of the people he had to kill, by the way. This argument ends with Andrew nearly choking Ashley out, hot, and the reveal that, guess what? You know that girl that Andrew locked in the trunk under Ashley's instructions?
You chose to lock in that crate where the fucking cunt choked. Cry yourself to sleep to that, Andy. My poor Andy.
Yikes. Anyway, somehow she smooths things over after that outburst, and the two agree to kill their former selves, the titular Andy and Leyley, and leave as new people. Ashley isn't really going to do that, though, obviously. The second chapter involves our protagonists on the run, escaping from a hired assassin, infiltrating a cult, and of course going to kill their parents to charge up Ashley's prophetic dream object by sacrificing them to the demon. This, of course, leads to the infamous shared dream segment at the end of the chapter. Highlights from this chapter include Ashley continuing to deny responsibility by making Andrew do all the dirty work for her, except for one instance at the end of the chapter, Andrew becoming scarily nonchalant about all the horrible things they're doing, Ashley harassing Andrew's ex, and of course, who could forget Andrew's dad walking in on him rummaging through his sex toys.
I want to fuck myself?
Also, Dad is such a bro here.
Andrew, weren't you supposed to be masturbating?
There's also several trippy dream segments, which we will definitely be getting into later. As you can tell, this story is one that has a lot of very strange moments. While it definitely has some important things to say, it doesn't necessarily take itself all that seriously that much of the time. Remember this, as it will be very important later. For now, it's time to get into the equally annoying and wildly cathartic portion of this essay. We've got to talk about Twitter. Ironically enough, I won't be spending a huge portion of this section talking about the actual controversy because honestly, it's pretty straightforward. People got mad about incest, the dev responded with this hysterical image, and Twitter got butthurt about it. The fact that Twitter was mad backfired on them immensely, and now the game has almost 8,000 positive reviews on Steam. Because, spoiler alert, the game is good. You know, until they harassed the dev off the internet entirely, which is a thing that happened halfway through writing this script. Now, I totally get if this is not your thing. If you want to skip my discussion of internet culture, feel absolutely free to go to the next segment, although I will say that in some small ways, it will build on some of the stuff I say here. Because, honestly, either you're going to watch this segment already agreeing with me, or you're the kind of person who already has their cursor hovered over that dislike button, in which case, congratulations, you've only succeeded in informing the algorithm that even more people need to see this video. So thank you for that. No, we are going to be using the wonderful opportunity this game has given us to have a real, honest discussion of Twitter, and more specifically, of purity culture. I'm sure most of you already have an understanding of this particular phenomenon, but for the sake of making sure everyone is on the same page, I am not talking about the Christian practice of virginity until marriage. In this case, the term purity culture refers to the utilization of superior morals in order to shame people. This often exhibits itself in fandom, where the practice can be used to shame certain ships, creators, or even entire pieces of media. Specifically, this occurs when terminally online user A makes a claim that terminally online user B cannot like a certain character or ship because some element of it is problematic. One common example is citing an age gap between the characters, leading user A to make claims of pedophilia, even if both of the characters are in fact adults. Sometimes it's done out of malice, intending to discredit a ship that user A simply doesn't like. Sometimes it's done out of a genuine desire to be morally correct. This practice did not start on Twitter. Because this is something that originated as an issue of fandom, it began in the original mosh pit of fandom, Tumblr. Back in ye olden days of the early 2010s, the internet and Tumblr was a very different place than it is today, and was primarily concerned with hipster styles and fandom pride. Eventually, as the social justice movement took off in the mid to late 2010s, Tumblr began to change as well. As the world got angrier, so did Tumblr. But of course, this changed from,
oh, well, pounces and nuzzles you as we listen to MCR, to, actually, there are people suffering and very important issues we should constantly be discussing all the time always.
It did not happen overnight. There was a big overlap period that occurred right around 2017, which coincidentally coincides perfectly with the height of the Hamilton fandom, in which Tumblr users were very concerned with ethics and social justice and all that stuff, while also still giving themselves fandom identities like Whovians. And this is where the trend of policing one's media consumption really took off. Because Tumblr users still were just those silly fandom kids for the most part, but wanted to seem cool and grown up and important, social justice and fandom began to mix in really weird ways. Instead of just calling someone an idiot for liking a certain character or ship, users began using excuses of moral high ground in order to claim objective correctness over their opponent's opinions. The reasons given for this ultimately are in the name of good representation, and ironically enough, a lot of these users who consider themselves radical leftists use the exact same argument as those who consider themselves radical right-wingers, that being, think of the children. Obviously, the intentions behind this practice are not always bad, even if a lot of bad actors utilize its rhetoric for selfish or malicious reasons. The intention is that we as individuals should be conscious of the media we consume, who made it, what it is trying to say, etc., because inevitably some of our money is going to the people who made it. And if a piece of media is explicitly distributing unjust rhetoric, or the person who made it, show me Joanne, is actively using their money and platform to support ideas you might not agree with, it's probably a good idea to not give them your money. That being said, policing yourself and policing others, or outright condemning an entire piece of media without actually understanding its true intentions, are very different things. And that's where the problem lies, isn't it? And then came the great porn ban of 2018. Back in 2018, Tumblr unleashed upon the platform a new policy which stated that Tumblr could no longer be the home for any sort of pornographic content. This included purely artistic expressions of the human form, and also some maybe, not as artistic expressions, which caused a huge amount of its users, a large portion of which were artists who were pretty fundamental in keeping Tumblr afloat, to embark on a great exodus to other platforms. Some fled to Reddit, but a vast majority went to Twitter. So thusly, a lot of the previous culture from Tumblr was copied and then morphed in unexpected ways, partially due to the fact that users had to contend with the character cap on Twitter, which, let me tell ya, is not a thing on Tumblr. Like, at all. And in a nutshell, that's kind of how we got to user A accusing user B of being a pedophile because they happen to like a ship featuring characters with a 5-year age gap. Okay, that might be a slight exaggeration, but the fact that I question whether or not to put in that sentence is kind of scary, huh? So, what does this have to do with the coffin of Andy and Leyley? God, I hope you can kind of make the connection, or else we really are doomed to a future of no critical thinking skills. The main criticism most users have against the game is that it is either promoting incest or simply made for the sick degenerates who would want to consume that type of content. I know the joke's been done to death, but like, come on, they literally eat a couple of guys, by the end of the second chapter, and Twitter is getting mad about the incest. This mostly only shows the mob mentality that can grow as soon as one person starts a witch hunt. It's clear by most of the comments I've seen at least that a vast majority of people condemning the game haven't actually played it, and for the users that did, they clearly didn't really understand what the game was trying to say. The most infuriating part of purity culture, for me at least, is the inability of most participants from differentiating between a story that contains controversial content versus a story that is actively condoning it. Nowhere, in any way, state, or form, does the writing of the coffin of Andy and Leyley suggest that you are supposed to be rooting for these people. They are assholes. Even Andrew. These two abuse each other, both verbally and physically. They manipulate each other. They make deals with demons. They eat people! For God's sake, they may be our protagonists, but they are not heroes. And the incest, whether subtext or out in the open, is another element of that. But again, if you just heard through the grapevine that this is a game about incest and you believe what you read on the internet, if, you're a child and you believe everything you hear, you are likely not going to give this game a second thought. To condemn it as the incest game and try to dox the creator like, oh my God, what is wrong with you people? For so many people nowadays, the world exists in a constant dichotomy of black and white. If you are a young person, maybe even a child, this worldview is at least somewhat forgivable. You as a human being have most likely not lived long enough to understand that other colors exist. People are capable of both good and bad things. A story can follow two absolutely awful human beings, and you can still understand why they are like that, even if you don't agree with them. This is the reality of the world, and I greatly admire writers who attempt to tackle this idea. The world is not black and white. There is no black and white, only varying shades of gray, and where that line falls for you in dividing between good and bad is amorphous and constantly changing based on you and your place in the world, the person involved, and the particular circumstances of any given situation. If you are a child, I can understand that this might be a concept that's hard for you to understand. If you are over the age of 20 and I'm blowing your mind right now, please stop watching Steven Universe and tackle something a little more challenging. I'm begging you. Fucking read a goddamn book or something. No, that's a Five Nights at Freddy's novel, Dragon. That was not what I was talking about. No, Drag on the font is size 14, please. Okay, I'm starting to get really preachy now. The point that I'm trying to make is that most everything has some sort of depth to it, some sort of story. And just as much as it is our job as consumers to be vigilant about the media we are consuming, it is also our job to try to look past the surface and see what the true intention of the work is, without making assumptions, without simply letting the internet hive mind control your thoughts and opinions. It is especially important when consuming a work as complicated as The Coffin of Andy and Leyley, if the length of this video couldn't tell you that, because trust me, it is complicated as all heck. So, now with that masterful transition out of the way, should we get to the fun part? Proving Twitter wrong. Of course, specifically proving that one guy who said that this game was made with incest in it purely for shock value wrong? Oh, believe me, I'm so ready for that. So are you ready to make some fuckers mad? Oh, I sure am. Alright, here we go. All the reasons why Andrew and Ashley Graves are the most deeply written and complicated characters of the year. The analysis in 3, 2, 1. Alright, fuckers, let's go! Okay. So, as per usual with these more explicitly essay-type videos, I'm going to explain my opinions and then spend the next 50 million years breaking down why you should believe me. And only one of those reasons is that I will come to your house and breathe on your dog. I had a cold when I was writing the script. I'm gonna give your dog the fucking sniffles. I'll goddamn do it. Before we begin, allow me to say that although I'm going to get really deep into why this story and characters are interesting and quote-unquote important, I am not going to pretend that is the only goal of this story. Is it gory and fucked up partially for the sake of being gory and fucked up? Of course it is! Is it a little bit horny? Yeah, I'd say so. And honestly, in a fictional space like this one, I don't really see a problem with that. One of the purposes of fiction is catharsis, the notion that we as human beings desire some sort of emotional release that doesn't involve ourselves, or in the case of severely fucked up shit, other real people. The other, the most important purpose that a lot of people these days seem to forget, is that a story should be entertaining. That's it. That's the main purpose of fiction. So is The Coffin of Andy and Leyley entertaining? To people who don't really like pitch black, throw the baby in the tumble dryer levels of dark humor, probably not. But for me, who thrives on that shit? Oh hell yeah it is! And if that's not your thing, hey, no problem pal, this story might not be for you. If you're going to complain that because you don't like it, it's objectively terrible, however, then
Go ride a roller coaster!
Anyway, now that I've said all that, let's spend the next millennia discussing why this game is important, which personally I find another level of entertaining, but also I'm a little bit weird. My basic thoughts about what this game is about is this. Ashley and Andrew are made to be terrible people very much on purpose. However, the more you learn about them, the more you begin to, if not sympathize with them, then at least understand why they act the way they do. It plays around with your idea of morality, that very idea of shades of gray and where the line lies that I was discussing earlier. Initially, you could view Andrew as the hero and Ashley as the villain, but as we discover, it's not quite that straightforward. There's a lot of manipulation that both siblings partake in, and even if your ultimate conclusion is that they are both just absolute dog water people, then the point still was the journey it took you to get there. Now what brings me to this conclusion? Oh boy, here we go. One of the primary narrative goals of the first chapter seems to be about constantly messing with your moral perceptions of the two main characters. Just when you've decided your opinion on one of them, the game will throw some new information at you that could potentially make you reevaluate the character. And this sometimes happens once every couple of minutes. Let's start with Ashley, as believe it or not, despite kind of being the poster girl for this game, she's the least complicated of the two. For her, it starts on the Steam page, or alternatively, simply by seeing her character design. She seems borderline designed to appeal specifically to Discord mods who are into goth girls with big titties. She's got that Harley Quinn, she will make you worse energy about her, you know? The Steam page specifically describes her as 20 years old, very not good, in fact very bad, paired with her nearly uwu-esque facial expression, and the immediate implication is that she is bad in a Mimi fanservice-y way. This is not the case! The story kind of drops us in media res in the middle of this entire fucked up situation and makes us figure out our thoughts and feelings about it from very limited and biased pieces of information. The opening moments of the game immediately hit you with some banger jokes, and even if they are told in the second person by the narration, you can tell that they are supposed to be things Ashley is thinking. Pair that with the conversation she has with Andrew about the tomatoes.
Because I hid it there, away from you.
I live in a den of snakes!
And Ashley seems pretty funny. Again, she comes off as a little jokingly manipulative to doormat Andrew, but that's a kink in and of itself, so we're not gonna get into that one. And that's how she gets ya. Despite their situation, despite constantly almost starving to death, Ashley keeps the mood up with her constant little snide remarks. She balances out Andrew's pessimism and general foul mood in a way that it almost seems like he needs. The chemistry between the two is immediate, and we can instantly grasp onto the fact that they might kind of need each other as siblings in order to function properly.
Well, how is it?
At this point, you could feed me a can of worms and I'd say it's the best thing I ever ate.
Kiss ass.
And then we get a dream-induced flashback from when Ashley and Andrew's mom left the apartment, directly after the quarantine announcement. She seems like she's in a huge hurry to get out and even snaps at Ashley when she asks where she's going. It's a little weird. And then later, when Ashley tries to call her, her mom begs her to stop and immediately comes to the conclusion that she's lying about the warden starving them. We could take two different things from this. Either A, that Ashley's mom is an uninterested or simply shitty parent, or that B, we're not getting the full picture and Ashley is not quite as normal as she's been wanting us to think. And then later on, we get another half piece of information when Ashley is half passed out on the couch. Like I said earlier, Andrew gets a phone call from his girlfriend, who promptly breaks up with him. We aren't told the specifics of the breakup, as when Ashley asks, Andrew's only response is,
Why do you think?
Ashley brushes this off as the fact that they haven't been able to see each other in so long due to the quarantine, but that really doesn't sound right. Now, with the fact that we specifically heard Ashley's name mentioned over the phone, and the context doesn't seem great. Right around this point, it's becoming pretty clear that Ashley definitely has some sort of attachment issues. The fact that she called her mom enough that she begged her to stop, and now it seems like there was some sort of altercation between her and Andrew's now ex-girlfriend, and the pieces are starting to fall into place. Shortly thereafter, the incident with their neighbor occurs. Now, if you are someone who has played the game, you might notice that I skipped over a couple of pretty important scenes. We're gonna get to that in Andrew's section. What? That wasn't foreshadowing? I don't know what you're talking about. The first thought Ashley has after seeing the corpse of their dead neighbor is, that's a lot of meat. She accidentally says this out loud.
Though, I mean, is it still illegal if we didn't kill the guy?
Is what illegal? Oh, you want to eat him!
Isn't that what you were insinuating?
Nah, I was just making an observation.
Over the rest of the game, she will repeatedly use the excuse that it was actually Andrew's idea to eat the corpse against him, even though in this moment it is made extra clear that she is the one who put that idea in his head in the first place. So by now, our opinion of Ashley should rapidly be moving over to the camp of something is most likely wrong with her. Our opinion on the moral implications, because at this point my opinion of her as a character was that I was rapidly falling in love with just how complicated and by extension fun she was turning out to be. But again, I'm kind of weird. Yet just when this happens, we get a scene which could be construed as either cold or caring, depending on who you are. Ashley cooks up one of the limbs of the cultist, your choice, and Andrew balks at eating it. Ashley forces him to swallow the first bite and then eat the rest of it. Of course, on the one hand, it is horrifying how nonchalantly she's acting about eating a human being. If anything, Andrew's reaction to all of this is the more normal of the two. But you can tell that she desperately cares for him in this scene. You could see her incessant upbeat energy as a way to make the situation not so horrifying for him and to get him to eat so, he doesn't die. Hey, so are you starting to see yet? We've gotten about an hour into my first stream of this game, only talking about Ashley. I haven't even gotten to Andrew's shit yet, and there's already so much to shift through. God, I love this game. Anyway, Ashley then goes to bed, and this is where the big scene of the chapter happens. This is the moment where we get a lot more information about the nature of Ashley and Andrew's relationship. This is the scene where she bullies him into shoving a girl into a crate and leaving her there all night. Turns out said girl was Leyley's friend, who made a simple comment to her that she likes her brother. Andy's response to all this?
Who?
By the way, in the flashbacks they are referred to as Andy and Leyley. This is very important. I will be referring to them by these names whenever the game does. Still, regardless of the fact that Andy doesn't even know who this girl is, Leyley immediately determines that they can no longer be friends. Not only that, but she thinks that she should teach the hussy a lesson.
You're my brother. Mine. I'll make her think twice before stealing from another woman.
Honey, you're like 8 years old. But also, yikes. So I guess the tagline, codependency and cannibalism, was pretty accurate. Huh? Leyley comes up with a plan to lure her friend into a warehouse that the two siblings often play in and lock her in a box all night. Andy is presumed to be already down with doing this, even though he has literally showed no interest, and in fact they should be getting groceries for their mother right now. Andy even tries to tell her no, that he doesn't want to do this, but Leyley won't take no for an answer.
Just go over and ask her to come with you. Take her to the warehouse and We'll see what happens.
Come on.
Do it, Andy.
I guess.
Hooray! You're the best!
Holy shit, did you see that quick change? Leyley went from pissed to ecstatic over the course of one voice line. This scene continues much the same, with Andy trying to come up with every excuse not to do this thing, and Leyley shutting him down and bullying him at every turn. So from this scene we can gather a couple more things about Ashley. Firstly, that she has always been like this. And I mean that in several ways. In her attachment to her brother, which we see here in a more obvious form since she's,
a child.
What do I do about all these hussies around you?
And especially in the fact that she's a manipulative bitch. She's like 8 years old and she's already got Andy at her beck and call, doing essentially whatever she wants. It's a little bit horrifying because it's clear through the very pointed things she says that she's doing it very much on purpose. Admittedly, Andrew is also letting her, but again, more on that later. The final thing illustrated by this scene is that Ashley is most likely some form of sociopath. Her friend even references the fact that she's got asthma, but Leyley doesn't even really seem to register this. Her friend isn't a person, she's a toy that Leyley can take out and play with whenever she wants. She seems to think the same thing about Andy, but at least he's a very beloved toy that won't be discarded easily. This very fact is brought up in the next scene, when Andrew comes to Ashley in the middle of the night, having not been able to sleep from the thoughts of dismembering a fucking corpse. He asks her how she's able to deal with the thoughts that they just ate a guy, and all she does is shrug and answer that she's good at compartmentalizing. This is also the first scene where adult Ashley refers to Andrew as Andy, and he really seems like he's not a fan. This is the first illustration we get of the main conflict between these two characters, that being Andrew's desire to become a different person, a better person, and Ashley's desire to keep everything the same as it's always been. Like I said, the names are important. Ashley's insistence on referring to Andrew as Andy and his hatred of the nickname becomes a shorthand for this conflict, and it's one that we'll most likely be dealing with for the entire run of the game. The next section of this chapter is where most of the plot things happen, so there aren't as many character details packed in, at least until things really start happening. Our two protagonists use their neighbor's open door, it was opened by a warden who came in to check on him, but now he is very dead, don't worry about it, to explore the apartment complex. On the third floor, they run into their neighbor, a cute gamer girl who gets pampered by the wardens because she fucks them for food. Or at least that's what's implied. I guess the game never outright states that. Ashley seriously seems angry that the wardens don't try to come fuck her for food. Weird thought. The odd jealousy train Ashley finds herself on continues when they come back to enact their plan, and Andrew tells her to go finish the ritual while he'll stay behind and make sure that the girl doesn't do anything. They needed her to call the remaining warden to lure him up to the neighbor's room so Ashley can sacrifice him to the demon, don't worry about it. Ashley seems oddly hesitant about leaving, and after everything is said and done, she returns to the room and reveals why.
And here I was wondering why you insisted on staying behind. Andrew shoots his load while I risk getting shot by the warden.
This blows up into a whole big argument between the two, with Ashley being oddly concerned with her brother's sex life and him wanting her to back off. It of course comes out that the reason his girlfriend broke up with him was because Ashley did indeed harass the hell out of her.
What? She told you? What a tattletale. You're better off without loose-lipped whores like that. All I did was weed out a quitter for you. And I wouldn't harass anyone if you'd stop ignoring me when I need you.
Okay, so this is kind of the moment when we can take both sides of Ashley's character, the internal logic and the external logic, and kind of try to reconcile them. The ultimate answer is going to change based on who you are, and for some people, like me, in the end there might not even be one. Firstly, let's look at Ashley from a purely internal perspective. From everything we've gathered, this is how Ashley sees the world. Ashley is an incredibly lonely person. She doesn't really have anyone she connects to outside of her brother Andrew, as we can see from how, unlike him, no significant others or friends of Ashley's are never mentioned except for the bitch in the box. So Ashley values this friendship with her brother strongly. She needs him. She is constantly scared of losing him to other friends or to a girlfriend. That's why she harasses his ex. For Ashley, Andrew is all she has, so she needs to do everything within her power to keep him close to her, because without him, she is all alone. She's a sociopath. People don't understand her. People think she's kind of creepy, and she herself doesn't have much interest in anyone else beyond Andrew. Externally, on the other hand, Ashley is a fucking bitch. She constantly manipulates Andrew to keep him around, cuts him off from any potential sources of joy in his life that aren't her, and is almost entirely responsible for the trauma that has been inflicted on him over the years. This manipulation and isolation is at least somewhat conscious, as Andrew calls her out on it a couple of times, like this scene where the harassment comes out, and she admits to it. Ashley is callous and cold and will do whatever it takes to keep Andrew wrapped around her finger. She, again, is a sociopath. It doesn't seem like she really values human life outside her own and sometimes her brother, but even his life is meant to serve her own. She is entirely selfish. One of these ways of looking at Ashley might outweigh the other for you, and if Ashley was indeed a real person, your thoughts might be even more different. Ashley does some incredibly fucked up things, and even if none of this is an excuse, she does have her reasons. She is not a caricature. She is a person with thoughts and emotions, even if those emotions are quite fucked up. We shouldn't judge her entirely by taking things from her perspective, but we shouldn't ignore it either. Anyway, Ashley then threatens to kill herself, complains that her and Andrew aren't friends anymore, and then taunts him by reminding him that the girl he locked in the box choked to death. All textbook gaslighting. She and Andrew finally agree that she will chill the fuck out if they leave and stay together, and that's kind of the end of chapter 1. Now, there's a whole other chapter to talk about, but a lot of what it does reiterates on what we learned here, and a lot of the new things it talks about involve both of the siblings and their relationship more than them as separate individuals. So for now, let's be kind and rewind all the way back to the beginning of this chapter again and talk about Andrew Graves. If you thought there was a lot to talk about with Ashley, then oh boy, I hope you're ready for this. Before we begin, I would like to give a special shout out to Hades on Discord. Some of what you're going to be hearing was first pointed out to me by them, so I just wanted to give them the credit they deserve for their thoughts. At first glance, Andrew seems like the least complicated of the two by a long shot. His description on Steam describes him as 22 years old, exists, doormat extraordinaire. This is incorrect! Well, okay, it's not, but there's a lot more to our good buddy Andrew than meets the eye. At the end of the day, he may be even more fucked up than Ashley is, even if she's the thing that got him there in the first place. At first, Andrew matches up entirely with his character description. Ashley walks all over him, doing whatever she wants, and he mostly goes along with it. Eat our last can of tomatoes, the only thing's keeping us alive? Screw our future selves. Where Ashley is lively, upbeat, and loud, Andrew is quiet, sardonic, and always has these enormous bags under his eyes. He just looks like he should be a dishwasher? You know, he looks like he should be washing dishes in a restaurant somewhere. God, I love him. Even the game acts like he's less important than Ashley. His internal workings are entirely ignored in favor of Ashley until the second half of the first chapter, and even then you really have to dig into the text of the story to get at who Andrew really is. Because deep down, though he puts on this facade of monotony, there's a couple of things Andrew is. One of the very first things we learn about Andrew is that he is a little oddly protective over Ashley. During the period of the story where they're still starving to death, the two witness someone being carried out of the apartment complex on a stretcher. When wondering what she did to deserve the special treatment, Ashley suggests that maybe she went into labor, furthering that thought by wondering if they'd give her food if she got pregnant.
Over my dead body?
Notice the sudden use of all caps. Of course, this brings up an odd thought, doesn't it? I'm sure you'll recall that beyond simple jealousy of someone else taking up Andrew's time, Ashley seems to have remarkably little interest in him sexually for something that's been labeled the incest game. Sure, she kind of flirts with him occasionally, but all that seems to be is another manipulation tactic. Because I would like to posit the theory that it is actually Andrew who has the sexual, or at least romantic interest in her, even if he tries to deny it himself. He is the one who often brings up things of that nature. He is the one who gets the most embarrassed about the dream they have in the scene, and in all the somewhat suggestive CGs, it is Andrew who is putting his hand on her ass. And then there's this scene where Andrew says he wants to jump off the balcony and Ashley says she'll join him.
But it is a bit too romantic, so I'll pass. Just imagine hitting the ground together. And with such force, our bodies turn into a pile of gory mush, never to be separated. Our remains would get so tangled up they'd have to bury us together in the same coffin.
Dude, even Ashley looks a little weirded out. Of all things, the game actually implies a couple different times that Andrew is a poet, or at least reads poetry. At the very least, he knows what the term romantic means. You know, the Victorian-era poetry movement, not like the emotion, although they get mixed up and together a lot. Because ultimately, in this scene, he's referring to the rather romantic notion of dying together and being buried in the same coffin, but it can absolutely be interpreted in a more literal way as well. And that finds us back at the section with the eating of the cultist. I said earlier that Andrew has the more normal reaction to having to dismember and eat a guy. Yeah, more normal, not normal. Because it's really subtle. Andrew understandably freaks out and worries about getting in trouble, but that's most of what he does. It isn't until later that he actually deals with the body horror of what he just went through. In fact, his very first thought about eating a guy is literally,
there's no way we wouldn't get caught once they finally let us out.
And this is something that Andrew does over and over again. Very rarely does he worry about the actual morality of the actions the two undertake throughout the story, only about their likelihood of paying for them. He does it here, we see it in the bitch in a box flashback, and again at the end of the chapter as they're planning their escape. There are only a couple of small instances of Andrew actually feeling remorse for his actions, and one occurs right after the aforementioned bitch in a box scene when Andrew wakes Ashley up in the middle of the night.
God, what the fuck did we do?
We already heard the part about how he couldn't get the cultist's head off, but even in this moment, he doesn't seem concerned about the guy they just ate. He's only concerned that he can't sleep thinking about the body, and Ashley is the only person who can help him sleep. As much as it seems like he sometimes despises her, it is here, in the middle of the night, that we see that just like she needs him, he kind of needs her. Andrew is anxious and angry. Of the two, he's actually the far more emotional sibling, and Ashley is the one who always keeps his head screwed on right. She's the one that often thinks logically when he's freaking out about getting caught. And this leads us back to the part where she calls him Andy. We've already seen what these nicknames mean for Ashley, a return to their childhood when things were simple and it was just the two of them. So what do they mean for Andrew? Well, definitely not something as positive, let me tell ya. They still represent that childhood time, but that period of his life is filled with more regret for Andrew. That was when his doormat tendencies started. In the modern day, he fights with Ashley sometimes. He asserts his own opinions. As we'll see later, he gets a little physical with her. But back then, when he was Andy, he really did whatever she said. All she'd have to do was tear up and he'd do anything for her, including essentially killing a girl. We'll watch them bury her body in the next chapter. As he says later on in this one,
Okay, but I'm not gonna be Andy anymore. He's so spineless.
So clearly he's at least somewhat aware that he lets Ashley walk all over him, because that's what the whole conflict is for Andrew. Staying with Ashley, letting her dictate his life, it's all so easy. Just like it's easy to be a bad person. But Ashley is not normal. Life with her will never be normal. Andrew has a chance to be a normal person. We'll see that later on when we get a flashback to him and his ex-girlfriend. But in order to do that, he has to cut out Ashley, has to cut out everything he's known. And that's scary. But that's a problem for his future self, as he would say. For now, he still needs her to help him sleep at night. The next morning, when Ashley and Andrew are in the middle of cleaning up their neighbor's apartment in case the wardens go to check on him, guess what? Said bastard shows up. Andrew runs back to their apartment to distract him, and Ashley cleans up all the blood. But she's a little too late to get out of there and has to hide in a big closet. The warden, unfortunately, finds her in there and... Oh, look. He's dead. Andrew killed him. Andrew killed him without a second thought.
Come on then, Leyley. Let's go play.
It's very easy for Andrew to stay with Ashley. It's very easy because he is just as fucked up as she is. With her, he doesn't have to pretend to be normal. This is only something that's hinted at throughout the two chapters we have now, but if Ashley is a sociopath, then Andrew is a psychopath. Ashley doesn't understand people at all, Andrew does too well, but they both ultimately don't care about anyone besides themselves and sometimes each other. This is a death that doesn't haunt Andrew, and never does. This is a death that he doesn't regret. In fact, even Ashley asks him about it.
So where's your mental breakdown?
I'm saving it for later. Lay off.
No, that's not something that people could normally do. And then he gets up right behind her and she knocks his hand away. Can you see what I mean? He is definitely the one who's into her, like what the hell? Anyway, he confronts her about telling absolutely no one about what they did because they've lost their desperation excuse now that they've, read Andrew, actually killed the person for real. But Ashley takes all of this very nonchalantly.
Yeah, see, I'm not sure you're grasping the gravity of the situation here. I'm not going to jail just because you think of yourself as impervious to consequences. So you're going to take this to your grave, even if I have to put you there myself.
She gets huffy and he gets all sad. Look at this boy, look at his little frown. And makes the excuse that he's just stressed out, but holy shit, he just dropped the fact that he cares more about not getting punished for his actions than about his sister's life. The first half of this chapter was all about learning how fucked up Ashley is, and then the second half is realizing that Andrew is not much better. The only question that's left up in the air is, was he, like Ashley, always like this, or is she responsible for making him this way? At this moment in time, we have no idea, but I guarantee it will be addressed more in the future. For now, Andrew has a choice to make. He has to make a decision between achieving normalcy by ditching Ashley or by falling right back into her trap again. That's right, we're back to the big confrontation scene. And just like in the Ashley section, it's all about her. Andrew finally lays out his grievances, tells her he knows that she harassed his girlfriend, and admits that he's very much aware of how she manipulates him and how he kind of lets her.
You always need something. You always have some bullshit crisis the moment I'm supposed to meet up with someone. Back at your beck and call, just like it was way back when.
Don't act like I'm the bad guy here. I've never once made you do anything.
Technically, she didn't. Technically, he did everything on his own. But of course he didn't. Of course we know that she asked him. She put the idea in his head to eat the neighbor. She begged him to lock her friend in a box in the warehouse, and he killed the other one because she was in danger. Ashley is ruining his life. He knows it, and she knows it, even if she vehemently denies it.
You backpedaling fuck of a brother! You chose me! You did!
So I guess we're not leaving here together.
You can see it in his eyes. He's sincerely considering putting this twisted sister out of her misery. But he doesn't. He fucking doesn't. He falls back into old habits. He learns nothing. Nothing was learned from this chapter. Okay, that's not exactly true. Ashley learned that if she puts up enough of a fight that she can still get exactly what she wants from him, and Andrew learns that he's still a goddamn doormat. Except not really, because in reality, Andrew is using Ashley just as much as she's using him. Andrew puts a lot of shit on Ashley. Andrew covers up his own flaws, the weaknesses in his own character, by telling himself that Ashley made him do it. It's all Ashley's fault. And often, yes, it is. But like Ashley says, he technically has always had a choice. He could have said no to her. At any point he could have said no, and there's nothing she can do about it. We have repeatedly seen that he's very capable of physically overpowering her. But in the end, he still lets her bully him into doing heinous things and lets her do whatever she wants. In case it wasn't clear before now, this story is not about good people, and this scene really makes that hit home. If you thought that Andrew had the potential to be the hero of this story, that goes right out the window right now. He is just as culpable in all of this as Ashley is. They are both awful people. That might ultimately be the conclusion that you come to, and that's fine. But I hope by this point you can see that these two have so much more going on. This is so much more than the game with incest in it, and you can already see how even that theme is being used to further the game's plot goals. How so? Well, it provides a really good motivator for Andrew to stay with her, despite everything she's put him through. These two characters have this odd magnetism towards each other. They are absolutely terrible for each other, and yet they still stay together anyway, and that's definitely something that gets explored even further in Chapter 2. You might have noticed that I've spent a lot less time talking about Chapter 2 throughout this video, and that is for a couple of reasons, none of which is that it is any less good. Chapter 2, however, is, I would say, much less tight than Chapter 1. It's got a lot of priorities. It has to juggle everything Chapter 1 set up, plus a whole lot of extra plot and world-building responsibilities. But that doesn't mean that there's not some good stuff in here in terms of characters, although some of it simply serves to cement our old thoughts and theories. Ashley continues to be a manipulative whore, including sicking her newly defenseless brother on a trained contract killer, which is great. Andrew also breaks into a cult meeting, but they seem to be more goofy than anything. Can't even summon demons right, shaking my head. But the main plot of this chapter involves going to their parents' new fancy house and robbing them blind. This does not turn out as expected, and they of course end up killing and eating them. Because of course they do. You may potentially recall from the last chapter that Andrew made Ashley promise to behave, which includes not contacting anyone they know ever again. But Ashley slowly wheedles him into it, first by saying that, oh, we're just going to rob her and not talk to her at all. This then turns into, so we're also murdering them, right? And when Andrew acts understandably upset by this thought, Ashley responds thus.
You just said we can't talk to them again anyway, so they might as well be dead.
So if we hadn't fully gotten confirmation that Ashley is at the very least a narcissist who doesn't see people as their own individuals outside of her, now we have. But of course, Ashley has used a clever trick here. By escalating the stakes, just robbing them now doesn't seem so bad, and Andrew immediately agrees. She needs him to agree, to at least get him there, because A, Ashley can't drive, and B, he's the only one of the two of them who has their address. The game then immediately proceeds to point out a very similar trick that Ashley uses. Again, remembering the first chapter, the other part of Ashley's agreement was to stop calling her brother Andy. Well, she is already back on her bullshit, and Andrew calls her out on it.
Like I don't know you, Ashley. You've pulled this shit before. You keep going Andy, Andy, until I get tired of correcting you. Suddenly it's Andy and Leyley and stupid bullshit all over again.
Ashley gets really upset about this outburst and sulks, which immediately makes Andrew ask if she's mad. This scene serves to prime us for all the little ways that Ashley is constantly manipulating Andrew and really driving home the fact that he often knows she's doing it but lets her do it anyway. Anyway, then Ashley falls asleep and has a dream where she meets the demon again and once again gets informed that her soul is tar. Lovely. You can also find an optional lore bit in here which mostly just tells us some stuff we already knew. Nobody likes Leyley because she's a bitch and Andy is her only friend. When she wakes up, she and Andrew talk about last night, but nothing really gets resolved and they just brush it under the rug as always. The other important things here are the other two dream sequences of the chapter and one other one, but before we get to that, can I just say, why does Mom look like Monica from DDLC? Is this just me? Has my inexplicable link with that game just ruined everything else for me ever? Honestly, yeah, probably. Andrew gets a pretty gnarly dream sequence here, and now we can kind of see why he sometimes needs someone to calm him down afterwards. We also learn a couple of very important things about him. Number one is that he has some more innately violent tendencies than he'd like to admit. You meet up with Leyley, and one of the immediate options you're presented with is to kill her. We also get to see his ex-girlfriend for the first time. She has a sprite, so that means they're gonna kill her in the future! And also she's really cute, and also they're really cute. You get the sense that they had something really special and that Andrew really could have had a somewhat normal life with her. Except there's just one little thing. One little detail. One of the last things he asks her in this scene, seemingly out of the blue, is to pull up her hair for him. Who else has their hair always pulled up? Reason number 5 why Andrew is secretly into his sister, just dotting this down, don't mind me. But we also hear from Ashley during this dream, in the form of several voicemails it seems she left on Julia's voice machine. Bear in mind that we don't necessarily know whether these are real voicemails or if this is just what Andrew imagines she sent, because there's a lot of mixing of the real and the not real in this dream of his. If they're real, we also get confirmation of Ashley's sexual interest in him.
Do you think you're better than me? Just because you can fuck him and I can't? You think that's love? Are you fucking delusional? Cum dumpsters like you are just that. He will never love you. Not like he loves me.
There's way more of this monologue. Please go watch the dubs. Please go watch the dubs. Please go watch the dubs. Anyway, if, however, these voicemails are not real, Andrew, buddy, I think you got some shit to work out, my friend. And I think that's the more likely option given the timeline. Unless Ashley's been doing this for a long time, Andrew wouldn't have had a chance to hear those voicemails because he's been stuck in quarantine. And if they have been going on for such a long time, one would think that the constant harassment would lead to a much bigger confrontation than it seems like it has. That's kind of just my pet theory though, so I don't know, log in the back of your mind, I guess. Andrew also states that he has no regrets in killing the warden, mostly because he kept leering at Ashley. Wait. Remembering that, he wishes he could have killed him slower. Again, bringing up the fact that he really does not like the thought of his sister involved with anyone else in any kind of remotely sexual manner. In fact, he really doesn't like the thought of Ashley being in any sort of situation away from him at all. The last part of the dream involves the second half of the flashback from chapter 1, which involves burying Nina's body. Yes, that's the name of the girl he killed, which he actually remembers, unlike Ashley. When Andrew sees what he's done, Again, really driving the point home here, his first thought isn't, oh no, I did something terrible, it's, oh no, I'm going to jail. But beyond that, we're adding one more little detail to the mythology of Andrew. The reason he's so scared to go to jail, at least at this age.
You don't get it, do you? Guys and girls don't go to the same prison. They're gonna take you away from me.
That wording though, not they're going to separate us, not even we'll be apart. The wording he uses is they're going to take you away from me, clearly indicating that he feels some sort of ownership over Leyley. She's his to get taken away, like a toy when he's been bad. Later on in this flashback, Ashley threatens him into making a deal with her, into always being her friend and being with her forever, because if he doesn't, she'll tell everyone what he did. They both cut their fingers. Why does everyone always cut their fingers? Jesus. And he paints an X over her mouth to keep her silent, while she paints a line over his eye to keep them shut. No more hussies. But hold on. He didn't agree to that.
I said I'd be around. I never said there wouldn't be others.
He played her. This child played his sister. And now, even though he's agreed to keep her around, that means that she has to stay around. Once again, the game really likes to hammer home that Ashley is severely fucked up, all while sneaking in so many hints that Andrew is too. And at this point, it's pretty much confirmed that Ashley didn't make him this way, as most of our evidence is from when he was still a child. And then later, when they have their parents tied up and are about ready to do the ritual, Andrew holds the cleaver to his mother's throat when she talks badly about Ashley. Sure, she had set up an insurance scam to fund a new life for herself based on their deaths, but question for you. Do you really think he would have done that so willingly in the first chapter? Doormat Andrew? Huh? Like Ashley said in her dream with the demon.
Something is shifting. I don't really like it.
This feeling is only exacerbated in this chapter when, unlike the last one, it comes to cleaning up after themselves, hacking the bodies up, etc. Andrew seems perfectly calm and collected. He freaked out over every stage of this process last chapter. You could account this as him becoming numb to the violence, which is partially the case, but think back to nearly every time Andrew has second-guessed what they're doing. I don't think he's just getting over it. I think he's realizing that they won't be caught, so there's no need to freak out anymore. On top of that, he's just casually able to butcher his parents now without a second thought, and even Ashley's noticing that something is wrong. She starts actually getting a little upset about it, which is funny. Ultimately, you think that Ashley would be pleased that he stopped bitching and moaning, but she's not. Because, you see, she likes Andrew scared. She likes him depressed. If he's scared, he'll never leave her for fear that she'll tell. If he's depressed, he'll never leave her because he needs her. If he's neither of those things, then how long is it going to be until he realizes that he doesn't need her at all anymore? There's a strange reversal happening in the dynamics between the two characters. Like Ashley says, something is shifting. Gradually, Ashley is ceasing to be the aggressor, the oppressor. Andrew had a couple of outbursts during the first chapter, but those were emotional and thusly easily manipulatable. Now he's exhibiting a cold calm. That is the opposite of what she wants. Anyway, the two decide to hold the amulet together and go to sleep, hoping that they'll both get to see some prophetic dreams. And then we get a proper dream sequence for Ashley this time. None of her dream really tells us anything new. It's more about testing what we know about her through solving visual metaphor puzzles. Of course, we have to stick the green plushie that represents Andrew in a cage. Of course, we have to replace everyone else in her life with him in a series of paintings. And then we get the final puzzle. And this is where you get to make a choice. A choice that is very well telegraphed and also double checks to make sure you're okay with it. And if you say yes, well, of course you get a vision of the siblings post-coitus. When they wake up, Andrew loses his goddamn shit, but Ashley seems pretty nonplussed about the whole thing. Again, she's able to brush it off as something weird, but Andrew seems way too concerned about it.
You just helped me desecrate our parents' corpses. Yet getting laid is what you're freaking out about?
Twitter. On top of that, you have to think about why the demon elected to show them that scene. All of Ashley's dreams spoke to us about Andrew, how she feels about him, why she keeps him around, her dream of being able to just lock him in a cage and keep him to herself. And the demon, well, the demon came through.
It certainly showed me one way to keep him around.
Ashley seems to consider this, almost for the first time, and further implies that again, she has no real romantic or sexual feelings towards her brother, but rather sleeping with him as a method of keeping him around. Anyway, they throw their parents' skulls in a river and move on to better days filled with killing and eating corpses and maybe having sex. Regardless, the chapter ends on a somewhat ominous note, and for now, that's all we've got. That's the coffin of Andy and Leyley. Before we wrap this up properly, I want to address something that happened midway through writing my script. Someone attempted to dox the creator of this game and almost succeeded, leading to her deleting all of her social media, transferring the ownership of the game to another company, and electing to finish the game entirely offline. This means, ultimately, that she probably won't see this video. That was not really my original intention anyway. Regardless, I would like to speak directly to her for a moment. What you have made is art. Plain and simple. I appreciate all the incredible effort that went into this work, and I'm more than thrilled to see the rest of it. And to those people who decided to use this opportunity to nearly ruin someone's life, you should be goddamn ashamed of yourselves. This game should have been the thing that jump-started a very long and fruitful career for this woman, and you fucked it all up. You've destroyed countless stories that might never be told now, and also maybe a person's life? I don't wish any ill will on you, because I don't wish that of anyone. But truly, I truly do hope that someone someday breaks into your house and breathes on your dog. Because fuck you. Seriously, fuck you. This is a person you fucked with, not just some pixels on a screen. This is a person that just wanted to make their art in peace. Regardless, I don't want to end this video on a sour note, so let's say something hopeful. I'll repeat the sentiments that I shared in the DDLC video, although that sentiment was going out to an entirely different group of people. If you're someone that came into this video with the intention to hate on it, I hope you ended up watching it, unlike the game that you didn't play. I hope that going through it with me maybe helped you see that there was a little more there than you thought, that this wasn't a game just made for degenerates, and that there is beauty in all things, even in the darkest topics. Because there is. Ashley and Andrew have some of the deepest characterization I've seen in years, and they stuck with me. I've spent so much time unraveling every single word that's come out of both of their mouths, trying to piece exactly where I stand when it comes to the madness they both committed, and I think that's a sign of a truly good piece of art. Above all else, however, above my somewhat pretentious posturing, The Coffin of Andy and Leyley is just fun. It's a fun story about two assholes committing crimes. Maybe it's not a story for everyone, but it's a story for me. And I think in the rare times when you find something that feels like it could have come out of your head, when you feel such a rare connection to the person that made it, that is such a good feeling. One that I hope everyone gets to experience sometime in their lives. Maybe I'll make another video on the second half of this game when it releases. Maybe I won't. Regardless, I sincerely hope that you yourself give it a try. I covered a lot of ground, but I certainly didn't cover all of it. There's so much deeper to be dug into the coffin of these two fucked up little guys, and this is a game that can absolutely lead to developing so many different theories and opinions. I mean, shit, we had a whole discussion about it after the stream in the Discord server. So please, give this one a try. If you take away anything from this video, it's to give this game a try. And hey, maybe you'll discover a new favorite game in the process. Or maybe you won't, I don't know, I don't give a fuck. Special thanks goes out to all my priests of the hog and my elder hog prophets: Adra, Chronoton, Eshok7, Greyman, Jonathan Hummel, Casey and Moore, Ventus Agri, Xavier Pena, and Yoko Elf. Thanks a bunch, guys.